Namaste, Namaskaram, Vanakkam, Namo Namaha, Jai Ganesha, Jai Hindu Yoga Dharma. So we have a lot of really beautiful teaching collages here, so you can stop the podcast at any time and just focus on these collages because there's tremendous teaching here. So today we're going to talk about the spiritual but not religious crowd and hopefully the end of illusion and waking up from secular so-called spirituality without roots. So among others you have Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, and the late Christopher Hitchens, who are highly intellectual public writers, debaters, and they've made sharp criticisms of religious violence, coercion, fanaticism, anti-scientific literalism, and of course the illusion of creating a one exclusive male creator, being God. And much of that criticism is valid, especially when it's directed towards violent monotheistic absolutism, forced conversions, religious terror, misogyny, political theocracy, and belief systems that become hostile to reason. But precisely because these writers are intelligent, the hidden contradictions in their rhetoric becomes more striking. The anti-religion logic sometimes contains hidden illogic. The anti-dogma can become dogmatic. Their anti-religion can become religion-like. Their anti-guru stance can create guru-like authority. Their critique of myth can become its own myth. Their critique of religious violence can become rhetorical violence. Their rejection of tradition can still depend upon tradition. Now, this essay does not defend religious violence, of course, and it does not deny religious abuse, and it does not romanticize every institution that calls itself religious. Rather, it asks whether sweeping slogans such as the end of faith, the God delusion, and how religion poisons everything become so broad that they stop being carefully philosophical and begin functioning as secular fundamentalist rhetoric. The end of faith, for example, or faith in the end of faith. Sam Harris's The End of Faith is rhetorically powerful. Public descriptions of the book present it as a critique of religion's role in terrorism, violence, and belief without evidence, with Harris going beyond extremists to indict religion itself, and even moderate religion, as dangerous because it preserves respect for belief without evidence. Now, the word faith does several things. Faith can mean dogma, and remember, dogma simply and profoundly means opinion, and we all have those. It can also be religious beliefs and fundamentals. There's a difference between having an opinion, however, dogma, and being dogmatic, when we have, one, a false opinion, or we're so opinionated. And faith can be meant to align with religion, but not necessarily. And faith can also mean belief without evidence. But faith can also mean hope, trust, fidelity, devotion, reverent confidence, and the human courage to continue when perhaps certainty is unavailable. It would be cruel, for example, to tell a parent not to have faith that a sick child may recover. Actually, when we wake up in the morning, don't we all have faith and hope that we're going to get through the day, especially the older we get? So the end of faith may still require faith in the end of faith. If the end of faith means the end of violent dogmatism, okay, well then say that. If it means the end of coercive religious absolutism, then say that. If it means the end of belief without examination, say it. But if it means the end of all religion, all devotion, all hope, all trust, and all spiritual confidence, then the title becomes extreme, unrealistic, and philosophically imprecise. A prophecy of the end of faith is still a prophecy. This is one of the central ironies. Remember, the initial meaning of religio is simply and profoundly the human attempt to tie, to bind, to link, to try to get our act together. I mean, this is human nature. So much has been written about love, and love is so much equated with religion. Of course, the opposite too, but we can't deny this. We see people with positive expressions of religion, which is positive expressions of love, devotion, an innate human quality. And what is that innate human quality? Some people call it the soul. Hindus call it the Atmana. It is really the impetus behind kindness and love and caring for one another. And it's not just relegated to the human primates. So when Harris and others talk about spirituality with religion, and even has a Waking Up platform, which describes him as the creator of a meditation app, a guide to mindfulness and deeper meditation, and someone who has studied with Tibetan, Indian, Burmese, and Western meditation teachers. The app presents courses, teachers, practices, guided meditations, and a structured path of secular contemplative instruction. But the phrase spirituality with religion needs obviously careful examination. If spirituality, and it does, refers to the incorporeal, the subtle, the inner, the sacred, or the transcendental dimension of life, then how does the embodied being relate to that incorporeal dimension? So literally, no body can be spiritual. They need something, some process, certainly the physical, mental, and emotional bodies, to strive to link to that which is incorporeal. How does one approach the subtle? How does one discipline the mind, purify the ego, and move toward realization? This is where religion, or religio, comes into play. Love is religio. Whether understood as linking, tying, binding, reconnecting, or gathering carefully, religio, and then the word religion came from that, provides some form of bond, path, discipline, method, community, symbolic language, and sacred orientation. Now, it may be corrupted, but it is not nothing. Spirituality without religion may still depend upon religion. Spiritual without religion may sound liberating, very enticing to the ego, of course, but by spirituality, when we mean the incorporeal light, and religion means the link, the tie, the bind towards the light, then spirituality without religion risks becoming oxymoronic. Light without path, height without ascent, awakening without a way. Imagine a light arising above a mountaintop. One may see the light, one may desire the light, one may speak beautifully about the light, but how does one get there without a path? How does one climb without a way? To want the light above the mountain while denying the path up the mountain is not necessarily awakening. It may be imagination or delusion without discipline, sadhana. In Hindu terms, the paths are the classic Hindu yogas: karma, bhakti, raja, jnana, mantra, japa, nada, nata, nada. In Buddhist terms, it might be the Buddha, the Dharma, the Sangha, the Eightfold Path, ethics, meditation, wisdom, liberation. So even when someone rejects formal religion, if they create teachers, practices, courses, communities, meditations, doctrines, and institutions, they haven't escaped structure, they've just renamed it. The title, for example, Waking Up, is powerful, but it also invites a question. Waking up to what? Waking up from superstition? Okay. Waking up from violence? Yes. Waking up from dogmatism? Those are valid. But does one also wake up to one's own extraction, contradictions, dependence, and hidden assumptions? Waking up may still be asleep to its own roots. What's it mean to wake up? If one wakes up from religion only to repackage religious practices under one's own secular brand, has one awakened? Or merely changed the name of the dream? A person may be awake to the dangers of religious violence and still asleep to the violence of erasure. A person may be awake to irrational dogma and still asleep to hidden dogmas in oneself. A person may be awake to the shadow of religion and still asleep to the shadow of secularism. The critique of organized religion is often justified when institutions become abusive, secretive, coercive, exploitive, violent. But all human institutions, and religions are one of them, contain some mixture of light and shadow because they are human creations maintained by human beings. Like anything else, religion can be corrupt, of course, but so can politics, science, medicine, education, media, therapy, technology, corporations, nonprofit organizations, secular spiritual platforms as well. If the failures of religious institutions prove that organized religion must end, then, by the same logic, one might have to call for the end of organized government, organized medicine, organized science, organized education, organized therapy, organized technology, and organized secular spirituality. So the counter to one saying they wish not to have organized religion, so we want disorganized religion. So the reality is that human beings organize because life requires a structure. Creation, preservation, destruction. Repeat. The real question is not organization versus no organization. The real question is right organization versus wrong organization, harmful organization, violent organization. The answer to corrupt organization is not no organization. The answer is truthful and accountable organizations, secular and religious. To reject organized religion while building organized secular spirituality is not liberation from organization. It is selective blindness towards one's own organization. Oh, we humans. Now, something interesting. Organized religion obviously is condemned by the anti-religious movement. But take, for example, where do you go when you need food, clothing, shelter, counseling, perhaps emergency medical aid, community support? Do you go to a science lab, yoga studio, university, psychologist's office, debate stage? So again, let's look at today's so-called mindfulness meditation without Buddhism, yoga without Hinduism. These things didn't arise in a vacuum. Yoga and mindfulness come from Hinduism, and of course Buddhism comes from Hinduism. Concepts like non-duality, self-transcendence, contemplative discipline, and inward practice are found in all religions. These practices were embedded in ethics, cosmology, liberation, renunciation, community, teacher-student relationships, and sacred language. When modern secular teachers take mindfulness meditation and the various Hindu yogas from Buddhism and Hinduism respectively, while dismissing religion as irrational, the question becomes, if the tradition is so irrational, why trust any of its practices? And if its practices are profound, why treat the tradition that preserved them as disposable? Meditation without Buddhism is simply another form of cultural digestion. Just as yoga without Hinduism becomes modern yoga extraction. In other words, keeping the fruit while cutting the roots. We all know what happens when we take a plant from its roots. It quickly shrivels and dies. Keep the word yoga while telling even Hindus that yoga is not Hindu. The issue is not that a non-Buddhist can never meditate, or that a non-Hindu can never stretch, breathe, or learn about Hatha Yoga, the proper title. The issue is honesty, humility, source recognition, and lineage respect. Each extraction plus erasure equals violence. Commercialization plus denial also is violence. Authority without ethical disclosure is domination, disguised as guidance. Do not kill a tradition's meaning while profiting from its practices. Of course, this is not physical violence. It is not the same as war, murder, or terrorism, of course. But violence can also be cultural, intellectual, spiritual, civilizational. Violence can be erasure. Violence can be an unethical renaming. Violence can be taking the sacred body of a tradition, cutting away its roots, and selling the remaining parts as neutral technique. Ego and money. How about the anti-guru guru? Many secular so-called spiritual teachers reject religious authority, gurus, priests, monks, and inherited lineages, yet they may become public guides, such as ours, for how to think, meditate, live, and interpret consciousness. They reject authority while exercising authority. They reject teachers while teaching. They reject religion while organizing practices of awakening. The anti-guru may become the guru of anti-guruism. A teacher who denies the need for teachers is still teaching. Anti-religion can become its own religion when it develops teachers, practices, doctrines, communities, and a promise of awakening. Well, generally for a price tag. The modern secular spiritual teacher, so-called, may become an existential authority unto themselves, rejecting inherited religious authority while quietly assuming the authority to define spirituality, meditation, reason, awakening, and the future of religion. Secular spirituality often becomes a tradition less tradition, built from pieces of established traditions. They want the fruit without the tree, the light without the path, the practice without the source. To borrow a tradition's contemplative practices while looking down on the tradition is not awakening. It is arrogance in meditative clothing. So let's examine for a moment Christopher Hitchens, or the late Christopher Hitchens, God is Not Great, how religion poisons everything. Now, much of the critique can be valid, and I certainly love to listen to him. He has a wonderful way of speaking. Now, when it's directed towards the violent monotheistic absolutism, coercive dogma, anti-scientific literalism, and the illusion of one exclusive male creator God, yes, all valid. But the problem begins when one form of religion is used to condemn all religions. Hindu Dharma, Buddhism, Jain, Taoism, indigenous traditions, mystical movements, temple traditions, monastic orders, devotional communities, they don't all share the same philosophy, structure, history. The new atheists are often highly intelligent in the body of their arguments, but sometimes anti-intellectual in the absolutism of their titles. Quote, religion poisons everything, unquote, is not a careful distinction. Everything? Every temple, every mother's prayer, every funeral chant, every act of charity, every ashram, every Buddhist meditation hall, every Hindu puja, every Sikh langar, free community kitchens, every indigenous ceremony, every mystical poem, every saint, every act of forgiveness inspired by religion. If religion poisons everything, why become so involved in religion through debates, books, lectures, and controversy with religious people? Would one not fear being poisoned? Of course, Hitchens would likely answer that one must confront poison in order to expose it, but the irony remains. Anti-religion public intellectuals may build careers, audiences, debates, and large incomes from the very thing they call poison. If religion poisons everything, then does profiting from anti-religion debates become poisoned income too? A title that sells books by inflaming contempt may itself become part of the problem it claims to solve. Provocative titles sell books. Publishers often favor compression, drama, and emotional force, but if the public mission is reason, clarity, and intellectual honesty, which they all tout, then titles that inflame contempt while overgeneralizing religion become ethically questionable. A title can be rhetorically brilliant and philosophically careless at the same time. The new atheists often cite primitive religious understandings of life and the cosmos. First attempts are not final truth, but neither are they nothing. They are the beginning of the human climb. The correction is not religion was early, therefore religion is worthless. The correction is religion was early, therefore religion belongs to the story of human development. Yes, it needs refinement, of course, correction, discernment, but not contemptuous erasure. Religious violence requires discernment, not slogans. If we discuss religious violence, we must not lump all religions together. Religion, empire, ethnicity, economics, nationalism, land, revenge, colonialism, and political power often overlap. Yes, some violence has been explicitly religious. Some has been political violence wearing religious clothing. Some has been imperial violence justified by theology. Some has been ethnic or national violence intensified by religious identity. So the point is not to deny religious violence. The point is to analyze it carefully. If one wishes to criticize monotheistic exclusivism, say monotheistic exclusivism. If one wishes to criticize imperial religion, say imperial religion. If one wishes to criticize coercive dogma, say it's coercive dogma. But to simply say religion poisons everything is not analysis, it's just a cheap slogan. Now, to Harris's credit, he has sometimes recognized that not all religions produce the same consequences. Discussions of his work often note his comparison of Jain's strong principle of ahimsa without violent religious extremism. And Harris himself has often said, why do we not see Tibetan Buddhist suicide bombers? This recognition strengthens the critique of his title. If religions differ significantly, why speak as though faith itself must end? To count religion's crimes while ignoring religion's gift is not reason, it's selective accounting. A movement that condemns religious violence should be careful not to cultivate rhetorical violence against religious people. Now let's look at the anti-dogma dogma. Remember again, dogma means simply opinion, and we all have one. As the cliche goes, curb your dogma. The anti-religion thinker may critique exclusive dogma, myth, and certainty yet reproduce parallel forms in secular language. When anti-dogma becomes absolutely certain of itself, it becomes the dogma of anti-dogma. The anti-myth thinker may still live inside a myth. The myth that he has no myth. The myth may be inevitable secular progress. It may be the idea that reason alone will purify humanity. It may be the belief that religion is the primary cause of violence. It may be the assumption that spirituality can be extracted without loss. They reject religion for speaking about mystery, then build a spirituality around consciousness, one of the greatest mysteries of all. When secular spirituality borrows the vocabulary of awakening, liberation, and transcendence, it has not escaped religion, it has just retranslated it. We developed something called the NAT principle. And now the refined NNNAT principle. So let's go back. Our NAT principle is the simple and useful teaching model. NAT. One's religion is not the way or extreme, exclusive, monotheistic fundamentalism, nor the other extreme of the N way. N stands for no way or the fundamentalist universalist. This is typical of the SBNR mindsets found in today's yoga. One is doing something specific, in this case yoga, and claiming this is universal. Same can be said for mindfulness. The claim is that this yoga or mindfulness is not specifically attached to any religion, but oxymoronically found within all religions. Interesting. Remember, the very word Catholic means universal. The balanced position is a middle way, a way. How far we would go, fellow human beings, if we in life itself, and certainly religious life, would humbly and profoundly admit that our way is a way. It's not the way, the pure, quote-unquote, fundamentalism, or the other extreme of the no-way universalist. And no way becomes always. You see, they're in the religious game, but they're claiming that their way, or their guru perhaps, is the essence of all religions. So they pay lip service to the other religions, saying, oh yes, we respect them, but only because underneath their breath, which they won't disclose to outsiders, it's our tradition that is universal and applies to all those religions. You see how there's a great affinity there, though they are extreme positions, as one goes back and forth like the girl on the balance beam, till we learn balance in the middle. Or Mr. Miyagi's profound lesson to his disciple Daniel-san, go find the balance. Balance everything. Bala nice, play nice. But now with the New Age atheists, let's go back to the beginning, and we get a nuance here of the N principle. So we have N1. This is the fundamentalist universalist we talked about. The no way or the always. Today's yoga, for example. All the roots are the same, dissolving all religions. Many Indian Hindus fall into this category as well. Now, Dawkins and Hitchens, for example, seem to represent N2, which is the quote-unquote pure no way. They're totally anti-religious. Religion poisons everything. Right? Totally against religion of any stripe. No way. Now, Harris may fit into another category, the N3. In other words, this is the borrowed no way. In other words, they reject all religion rhetorically while keeping, in this case, Buddhist mindfulness, meditation, non-duality, spirituality, and organized contemplative practice. This is religious extraction without recognition. But again, a balanced correction is a way. It does not say that only one path may remain. It also does not dissolve all paths into a vague universal sameness or universal spirituality. It honors rooted traditions as real ways, with real differences, real disciplines, real histories, and real sacred context. So, the answer to religious violence is not the end of religion. Come on. The answer is the end of violence, of fanaticism, coercion, abuse, and dishonest certainty. The answer is reform, accountability, humility, and truthful rooted plurality. The answer is not to erase Dharma, not to erase Buddhism, not to erase yoga and its integral Hindu connection. The deeper need is the end of these delusions, vikalpa. There's an illusion that spirituality can exist without a path, without a bond, without discipline or transmission. The illusion that meditation can be extracted from Buddhism, or mindfulness in this case, without loss. The illusion is that yoga can be extracted from Hindu Dharma without erasure. The illusion that organized religion is dangerous, but organized secular spirituality is automatically pure. The illusion that rejecting gurus prevents guru-like authority. The illusion that one has awakened while still sleeping through one's own dependency on the traditions one is critiquing. A better future does not require the end of faith. It requires the purification of it. It does not require the end of religion. It requires truthful religion, accountability, humility. It doesn't require the destruction of tradition. It requires honest relationship within traditions. The end of illusion is not the end of the sacred. It is the beginning of seeing clearly. And seeing clearly means recognizing that the light above the mountain still requires a path. And that path requires humility, which is wisdom, folks. Don't confuse it with being humiliated, my fellow Hindus. And the fruit still belongs to the tree from which it grew. So let's all strive to go from untruth to truth and humbly admit our ignorance in many areas of life, moving towards an ever more enlightened state of being, and seeking a peace, but it's a peace through strength and justice. Om Asato Ma Sat Gamaya, Tamaso Ma Jyotir Gamaya, Amrityorma Amritam Gamaya, Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.